The ground shook under Kim Taeho's boots as another plasma blast hit the colony wall. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. He pressed his back against a broken concrete barrier and checked his rifle. "Only 3 energy cells left, Captain," Lieutenant Park called out from across the street. "The transport is ready. We need to move now." Taeho looked at the burning buildings around him. This was the last human colony in this part of space. If they lost it, there would be nowhere left to run. The Valerian Empire had taken everything else. He ran toward the transport ship, keeping low. Children cried as their parents carried them up the ramp. Old people moved slowly, helped by younger colonists. Everyone looked scared. "How many more?" Taeho asked Park. "Maybe 50 still in the south sector, but the Valerians are closing in fast." Taeho made his choice. "Take off without me. I'll get the others." "Sir, that's suicide. There are too many of them." "That's an order, Lieutenant," Park saluted with sad eyes. He knew better than to argue with his captain. Taeho ran back into the burning colony. The Valerians were everywhere now. They were tall, almost 3 meters high, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow. Their eyes were solid black, and they moved without making any sound. Each one carried a weapon that could cut through steel like paper. He found the survivors hiding in an old-school basement. Families with small children, a few elderly people, and some wounded soldiers. "There's another transport coming." He lied to keep them calm. "We just need to get to the landing pad." They believed him because they had to. Hope was all they had left. The group moved through the back streets. Taeho led them carefully, checking each corner. The Valerians had flying ships that could see through walls, but the smoke from the fires might hide them. They were almost at the landing pad when the trap closed. Valerian soldiers appeared from everywhere. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. The civilians screamed and huddled together. "Let them go," Taeho said, dropping his rifle. "They're not soldiers. I'm the one you want." The Valerians didn't answer. They never spoke during battle. They just pointed their weapons and waited. Then she appeared. The Empress stepped out of thin air like she had been invisible. She was different from the others. Taller, with skin that actually glowed with soft light. Her hair was white as snow and floated around her head like she was underwater. When she looked at Taeho, her black eyes seemed to see right through him. "So this is the famous Captain Kim," she said. Her voice was like music, but cold music. "The human who destroyed 3 of my fleets with nothing but old ships and clever tricks." Taeho said nothing. He had heard stories about the Empress. She could read minds and kill people just by thinking about it, but he wouldn't show fear. "Your people may go," she said with a wave of her hand. "They bore me. But you, little soldier, you are interesting." The civilians ran toward the landing pad. Taeho was glad they would live, even if he wouldn't. "Do you know why I came here myself?" the Empress asked, walking around him like a hunter studying prey. "I have generals who could have taken this colony. I have admirals who could have captured you, but I wanted to see you with my own eyes." She stopped in front of him. "Your species is weak. Your bodies break easily. Your lifespans are short. Your technology is primitive, yet somehow you keep winning battles you should lose. How?" "Maybe we're just better than you think," Taeho said. The Empress smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "Perhaps, or perhaps you're simply too stupid to know when you're beaten." She raised her hand and Taeho felt his mind being invaded. It was like having someone else's thoughts pushed into his head. He saw flashes of memory that weren't his own. Valerian cities made of crystal. Armies conquering planet after planet. Millions of people from different species all bowing before the Empress. Then the invasion stopped. The Empress looked confused. "Interesting," she said. "Your mind resists me. Most species cannot do that." She walked closer. "I have a proposition for you, Captain Kim. You have impressed me with your tactical skills and your stubbornness. I offer you 2 choices." Taeho waited. First choice, become my consort. Live in luxury in my palace. Your people will become subjects of my empire, but they will be treated well. You will have power, comfort, and a very long life. I can extend human lifespans with our technology. And the second choice, her smile became cruel. Refuse me and become my personal military slave. You will serve in my armies forever, watching as your species is scattered across the galaxy as laborers and servants. You will see their suffering every day, knowing you could have prevented it. Taeho looked at her for a long moment. Around them, Valerian soldiers waited silently. In the distance, he could hear the transport ship taking off with the last civilians. "I choose option 3, he said. "There is no option 3. I choose to fight you until one of us is dead." The Empress laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "How wonderfully human. Very well. You have made your choice." She nodded to her soldiers. They fired their weapons, but not to kill. Blue energy wrapped around Tejo like chains. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. But he could still think, and in his thoughts he was still defiant. "Sleep, little soldier," the Empress said as darkness closed over his mind. "When you wake up, you will learn what defying me truly means." The last thing Tejo saw was the burning colony disappearing below as the Valerian ship carried him up into space. He had saved the civilians, but now he was alone with the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. The war was far from over. Tejo woke up to the sound of screaming. His head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. The air smelled like metal and fear. When he opened his eyes, he saw gray walls, gray floor, and gray ceiling. Everything was made of the same cold stone. He was lying on a thin mattress in a small cell. Through the bars, he could see other prisoners in cells across a narrow hallway. Most of them weren't human. A guard walked by. It was a Valerian, but different from the soldiers he had seen before. This one looked tired and mean. His pale blue skin was marked with dark scars. "Wake up, human," the guard said, hitting the bars with his weapon. "Time to work." The cell door opened with a loud buzz. Tejo stood up slowly. His body hurt everywhere, but he could move. "Where am I?" "Tartarus Prime," the guard said. "Prison world. You're going to dig until you die. Most humans last about 2 years here. Try to last longer. It's more fun for us." They put chains on his hands and feet. The chains were made of some kind of metal that felt cold and seemed to drain his energy. Then they pushed him into a long line of prisoners walking down a dark tunnel. The prisoner in front of him was a human woman. She was thin and dirty, but her eyes were still sharp and intelligent. "I'm Dr. Park Soo-jin," she whispered without turning around. "You're the famous Captain Kim, aren't you?" "How did you know?" "Word travels fast here. The Empress herself brought you." "That's never happened before," she paused. "I'm a xenobiologist. I've been here for 8 months. The tunnel opened into a huge underground mine. The ceiling was so high Tejo couldn't see it. Thousands of prisoners worked with picks and shovels, digging strange blue crystals out of the rock walls. The crystals glowed with their own light. "What are those?" Tejo asked. "Psychic amplifiers," Soo-jin said. "They make Valerian mental power stronger. Without these crystals, the Valerians would be just tall aliens with fancy technology." A guard shoved Tejo toward a wall where other prisoners were working. "Dig," the guard said. "Fill 1 cart per day or no food." The work was brutal. The blue crystals were hard to break free from the rock. The mining tools were old and heavy. The air was full of dust that made it hard to breathe. But Tejo had been through hard times before. He started working, learning the rhythm of the mine. Hit the rock, break the crystal, put it in the cart, over and over. During the lunch break, he met more prisoners. Lieutenant Choi Min-seok had been a pilot before the Valerians shot down his ship. Engineer Lee Na-young had been captured when her research station was attacked. There were also aliens from many different species, all conquered by the Valerian Empire. "How long have you been planning an escape?" Tejo asked quietly. Soo-jin shook her head. "There is no escape. This planet is surrounded by Valerian warships. Even if we got out of the mine, where would we go? Then we make our own way out. With what? We have pickaxes and shovels. They have energy weapons and mind control." That afternoon there was an accident. A support beam broke and tons of rock came crashing down. Several prisoners were trapped underneath. The Valerian guards just stood and watched. "Help them," shouted a prisoner who looked like a giant lizard. "Not our problem," said a guard. "Dead prisoners don't eat food. More food for the ones who survive." Tejo couldn't stand it. He ran toward the rock pile and started digging with his bare hands. Min-seok and Na-young joined him. Then Soo-jin. Then the lizard alien. Soon dozens of prisoners from different species were working together to save the trapped ones. They managed to pull out 5 prisoners before more guards arrived. 3 were badly hurt, but they were alive. The head guard was angry. "Who started this?" Nobody answered. The prisoners all looked at the ground. I said, "Who started this rescue?" Tejo stepped forward. "I did." The guard hit him with an electric stick. Pain shot through his body and he fell to his knees, but he got back up. "Stupid human. Those prisoners weren't your species. Why help them?" "Because it was right." The guard hit him again. This time Tejo stayed down. That night, back in his cell, Soo-jin managed to bring him some medicine she had made from cave plants. "Why did you do that?" she asked. Now they'll watch you more carefully. Someone had to, but they weren't human. In a place like this, you have to look out for your own kind first. Taeho looked at her through the bars. Maybe that's why humans keep losing. Maybe we need to think bigger. Word of the rescue spread through the prison. Prisoners who had never talked to humans before started nodding at Taeho when he walked by. The lizard alien, whose name was Korthak, saved a seat for him at dinner. "You have strange ways, human," Korthak said in broken common language, "but good ways." Sujin had been studying the blue crystals in secret. She shared her discoveries with the others. "These crystals don't just amplify Valerian psychic powers," she explained. "They're slowly poisoning them too. The more they use, the more their minds burn out. That's why the Empire keeps expanding. They need more crystals to replace the ones that stop working." "How do you know this?" Na Young asked. "I've been watching the guards. The older ones have memory problems. They forget things, repeat themselves. One guard told me the same story 3 times in one day. This was important information. If the Valerians were slowly destroying themselves with their own power source, maybe there was hope after all. But hope was dangerous in a place like Tartarus Prime. Hope made you think about freedom. And thinking about freedom made you do stupid things. Taeho didn't care. He had made a choice in that tunnel when he helped save the trapped prisoners. He wasn't just going to survive. He was going to resist. Far above, in her crystal palace, the Empress watched him through hidden cameras. She saw him working with aliens from other species. She saw him sharing his food with weaker prisoners. She saw him standing up to guards who bullied others. Fascinating, she said to herself. Most species become selfish when they suffer. But this human becomes more generous. She leaned forward in her throne, studying the screens. Perhaps there is something to learn here after all. 3 months later, everything had changed. What started as small acts of kindness had grown into something much bigger. Taeho had become the unofficial leader of a group that included humans, the lizard-like Korthak, bird people called Ethans, and even some rock creatures from the outer rim. They called themselves the Underground, and they were causing problems for the Valerians. It started small. Tools would disappear and reappear broken. Mining equipment would mysteriously stop working. Guards would find their food spoiled or their weapons drained of power. Na Young had figured out how to mess with Valerian technology. Their stuff is too complicated, she explained to the group during a secret meeting in an abandoned tunnel. They rely on psychic connections to make everything work. But if you know where to hit it, she showed them a small device she had built from scrap metal and broken crystals. This scrambles their psychic signals. Won't work for long, but long enough. Sujin had made an even more important discovery. I've been testing the crystal dust we breathe every day, she said. It doesn't just hurt Valerians. It makes other species resistant to their mind control. What does that mean? Asked Korthak. It means the longer we're here, the harder it becomes for them to control our thoughts. This explained why the older prisoners seemed less afraid of the guards. Their minds had built up a resistance. Min Seok had been mapping the entire prison complex. There are 3 main levels, he said, drawing in the dirt. We're on level 2. Level 1 is where they keep the dangerous political prisoners. Level 3 is where they process the crystals. What about getting off this planet? Asked an Ethan named Skyweaver, working on it. There's a shuttle bay on level 1, but getting there means going through a lot of guards. Taeho listened to all of this, but his mind was thinking bigger. We're not trying to escape, he said finally. Everyone stared at him. This isn't about running away anymore. There are thousands of prisoners here, millions more on other prison worlds. If we can make the Valerians look weak here, maybe other people will start fighting back too. You want to start a war? Skyweaver asked. The war already started. We're just choosing which side to be on. Their first real operation was an attack on the Crystal Processing Center. Na Young's signal scramblers would disable the security systems. Min Seok would lead a team to steal explosives from the storage area. Sujin would make sure the prisoners working there got out safely. Taeho would handle the guards. The plan went better than expected. The scramblers worked perfectly. The guards were confused when their weapons wouldn't fire and their communication systems failed. In 10 minutes, they had destroyed enough equipment to shut down crystal production for weeks. But the real victory was what happened next. Word of the attack spread to other prison worlds through smuggled messages. Riots broke out on 4 different planets. The Valerian Empire had to send military ships to deal with the uprisings, ships they needed for other battles. the Empress noticed. She arrived at Tartarus Prime in her personal warship, surrounded by her elite guards. The entire prison was put on lockdown. All prisoners were forced to stand in the main courtyard while she walked among them. She was even more impressive in person than Taeho remembered. Her white hair moved like it was alive. Her black eyes seemed to look into everyone's soul at once. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the courtyard without any amplification. "Someone here has been causing trouble," she said. "Someone thinks they can challenge the power of the Valerian Empire." She walked slowly through the rows of prisoners. Some of them tried to look away, but her gaze forced them to meet her eyes. "I could read all of your minds right now," she continued. "I could find the guilty ones and execute them in front of everyone. But that would be wasteful." She stopped in front of Taeho. "Captain Kim. Still choosing the hard way, I see." "Hello, Your Majesty. Nice to see you again." She smiled that cold smile. "Walk with me." It wasn't really a request. Taeho found his feet moving even though he didn't want them to. They walked to a private area where her guards couldn't hear them. "You're destroying my property," she said. "Your property is destroying itself. We're just helping it along. These prisoners are criminals and rebels. They deserve to be here. Some of them, maybe. But what about the doctors who wouldn't work on biological weapons? The teachers who wouldn't teach Valerian history in their schools? The children who were born on the wrong planets?" The Empress was quiet for a moment. "The universe is not fair, Captain. The strong rule the weak. This has always been true. Maybe it doesn't have to be." She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You think your little rebellion matters? I have 1,000 worlds, 10,000 ships, 1,000,000 soldiers. What do you have? Hope. Hope is not a strategy. It is for humans." She studied his face. "Yes, I've been learning about human history. You're a very strange species. Most races become more selfish when they face extinction. But humans become more generous, more willing to sacrifice for others. Why? Maybe because we know that if we don't help each other, nobody will help us. And yet you're always fighting each other too. We're working on that." She turned away from him and looked out at the prison courtyard. "My empire is dying, Captain. The crystals that give us power are burning out our minds. Each generation of Valerians is weaker than the last. In a few hundred years we will be just another conquered species. So why keep conquering? Because it's all we know how to do." She turned back to him. "But you know how to build things, how to unite different species, how to make people want to follow you without forcing them. Are you asking for help? I'm asking for understanding. My people made themselves into gods, but gods are lonely. They rule through fear, and fear doesn't create loyalty. It only creates more fear." Taeho thought about this. "There's another way. Show me." Over the next few weeks, something very strange happened. The Empress stayed on Tartarus Prime not as a conqueror, but as an observer. She watched how the prisoners organized themselves. She saw humans sharing food with aliens they had never met before. She watched Taeho settle disputes between different species by finding solutions that helped everyone. "In Valerian society," she told him one evening, "the strong take what they want from the weak. But in your group, the strong protect the weak. Why? Because today I'm strong and you're weak. But tomorrow you might be strong and I might be weak. If I help you today, maybe you'll help me tomorrow. That requires trust." Yes. Trust is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable. Everything worthwhile is dangerous. She was beginning to understand why humans kept winning impossible battles. It wasn't because they were stronger or smarter. It was because they fought for something bigger than themselves. But understanding and accepting were two different things. The challenge came at dawn. Taeho stood in the prison courtyard facing the Empress and her assembled guards. Every prisoner on Tartarus Prime had been forced to watch. Ships from across the Valerian Empire had arrived overnight, bringing nobles and military commanders to witness what was about to happen. Ancient Valerian law allows for trial by combat, the Empress announced, her voice carrying across the courtyard. Captain Kim has invoked this right, claiming that he can prove human superiority in single battle. That wasn't exactly what Taeho had said, but he didn't correct her. The truth was more complicated. Over the past month, Sujin had made a breakthrough. The crystal dust that filled the air wasn't just making prisoners resistant to mind control. It could be concentrated and used as a weapon against Valerians. Nayoung had figured out how to build devices that could amplify this effect. and Minseok had discovered that there were resistance cells on dozens of other worlds, all waiting for a signal to act. But none of that mattered if they couldn't inspire others to believe that the Valerian Empire could be beaten. "If I win," Taeho said loudly, "all political prisoners go free. All conquered worlds get the chance to choose their own government. The Valerian Empire stops expanding and starts negotiating." The assembled nobles laughed. The idea of a human defeating a Valerian champion was ridiculous. "And if you lose?" the Empress asked. "Then I accept your original offer. I become your consort and humanity serves your empire." The laughter stopped. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was a bet with the future of entire species at stake. "Very well," the Empress said, "but you will not face me. You will face my champion, General Vextahon." The champion stepped forward. He was the largest Valerian Taeho had ever seen, nearly 4 meters tall with skin that glowed like blue fire. His psychic powers were so strong that the air around him seemed to shimmer and bend. "This is suicide," Sujin whispered to Taeho as guards led him to the preparation area. "Even with all our discoveries, you can't beat him in a fair fight." Who said anything about fair? Taeho's plan was simple in concept but incredibly dangerous to execute. While all attention was focused on the arena, resistance cells across the Empire would launch simultaneous attacks on crystal processing facilities, communication centers, and military bases. The goal wasn't to win these battles, but to prove that the Valerian Empire could be hurt. Naeyoung had built him a special suit of armor from scrap metal and crystalline dust. It looked primitive compared to Valerian technology, but it would protect him from psychic attacks long enough to do what needed to be done. Minseok had organized the timing. At exactly noon, when the arena battle began, every resistance cell would receive the signal to attack. Sujin had given him something even more important, a way to share human mental resistance with others. It was a modified version of the crystal dust, compressed into small pellets that would dissolve in the air and be breathed in by everyone in the arena. "Remember," she said as they put the final pieces of armor on him, "this isn't about beating him. It's about lasting long enough for the plan to work." The arena was enormous, carved out of black rock and surrounded by floating platforms where thousands of spectators could watch. Holographic cameras recorded everything for broadcast across the Empire. Taeho walked out onto the sand floor, carrying a simple human sword and wearing his makeshift armor. He looked tiny compared to General Vextahon, who floated above the ground surrounded by crackling energy. "This is your last chance to surrender," the general said. His voice was like thunder. "I do not wish to kill you, human. Your courage is admirable, even if it is foolish." "Thanks for the offer," Taeho replied, "but I'm pretty committed to this plan." The Empress raised her hand. "Let the trial begin." General Vextahon attacked immediately, sending waves of psychic force that would have crushed a normal human's mind. But Taeho's armor held, and the crystalline dust began to take effect. The general looked confused when his mental attacks failed. He tried again, pushing harder, but Taeho just smiled and charged forward with his sword. The crowd gasped. No one had ever resisted Valerian psychic power so completely. The battle became physical. General Vextahon was faster and stronger, but Taeho was smarter and more experienced. He had been a soldier for 20 years, fighting in every kind of environment against every kind of enemy. Around the arena, the modified crystal dust was spreading through the air systems. Prisoners in the audience began to sit up straighter. Their eyes became clearer. Some of them started to look angry instead of afraid. That's when the first reports came in. "Your Majesty," a messenger ran onto the arena floor, interrupting the fight. "We're receiving emergency signals from across the Empire. Military bases under attack. Communication centers destroyed. Crystal processing facilities sabotaged." The Empress's eyes widened. "How many locations?" "Over 300, Your Majesty. And the number is growing." In the arena, Taeho and General Vextahon continued their battle, but everyone's attention had shifted. The floating screens around the stadium began showing images from across the Empire. Humans, aliens, and even some Valerians were fighting together against Imperial forces. "This is impossible," the Empress said. "How did they coordinate this?" Taeho ducked under the general's energy sword and smiled. "We've been talking to each other for months. Turns out, when you give people hope, they start making their own plans." The general roared and attacked with everything he had. Energy blasts scorched the sand. Psychic waves cracked the arena walls, but Taeho kept moving, kept fighting, kept proving that humans couldn't be broken. Then something unexpected happened. Some of the Valyrian nobles in the audience began to look uncomfortable. The crystal dust was affecting them too, clearing their minds for the first time in decades. They started to remember what their empire had done to countless worlds. One of them stood up. "This has gone too far," he said. "We cannot continue this path of endless conquest." Others nodded. More stood up. The Empress realized what was happening. The very substance that gave Valyrians their power was now working against them, forcing them to confront the reality of their actions without the mental haze that had justified centuries of cruelty. "Stop the battle," she commanded, but General Vextahan was too far gone in his rage to hear her. He gathered all his remaining power for one final attack that would destroy not just Taeho, but half the arena. That's when the other prisoners acted, led by Su Jin, Min Seok, Nayang, and Korthak. Hundreds of prisoners rushed onto the arena floor. They formed a protective circle around Taeho, ready to absorb the general's attack with their own bodies. "If you want to kill him," Su Jin shouted, "you'll have to kill all of us first." General Vextahan hesitated. He had power enough to destroy them all, but something about their courage made him pause. In that moment of hesitation, the Empress made her own choice. She stepped into the arena and placed her hand on the general's shoulder. "Enough," she said quietly. "This ends now." The silence in the arena was complete. General Vextahan lowered his weapon, but his eyes still burned with rage. The Empress stood between him and the circle of prisoners protecting Taeho. Around the stadium, thousands of spectators waited to see what would happen next. Reports continued to flow in from across the empire. The coordinated attacks were succeeding beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Entire star systems were declaring independence. Valyrian military units were surrendering or switching sides. The empire that had seemed unbreakable was falling apart in real time. "You planned this," the Empress said to Taeho. "It wasn't a question. I told you hope was our strategy." Taeho stepped forward, still protected by his circle of friends. "The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" The Empress looked around the arena. Her nobles were arguing among themselves. Some demanded immediate military action to crush the rebellions. Others insisted it was time to negotiate. A few were openly supporting the idea of ending the empire entirely. "I could still win this," she said. "I have enough ships to burn every rebel world to ash." "You could try," Taeho agreed. "But your own people are starting to wake up. How long before your own soldiers refuse to follow orders?" As if to prove his point, one of the Valyrian guards in the arena removed his helmet and threw it on the ground. Then another. Within minutes, half the guards had abandoned their posts. "This is madness," General Vextahan growled. "We are the superior species. We have ruled for 1,000 years. And what has it gotten you?" Su Jin called out. She had moved to stand beside Taeho. "Your minds are burning out. Your empire is collapsing. Your people are miserable. Is this what you call victory?" Nayang stepped forward too. "We've analyzed your technology. All of it depends on the crystals, and the crystals are killing you. In 50 years, maybe less, you won't have enough functional Valyrians left to maintain your fleet." Min Seok joined them. "The rebellion isn't just humans anymore. It's everyone you've conquered. Every species that wants a chance to choose its own future." Even Korthak moved into the group, his lizard face showing determination. "My people suffered under Valyrian rule for 3 generations. Today, they are free again." The Empress listened to all of this, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "What do you want from me?" Taeho took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "I want to give you the same choice you gave me," he said. "Surrender and stand trial for your crimes against billions of people, or—" He paused, making sure everyone in the arena could hear him clearly. "Join us. Help us build something better. Use your knowledge and resources to fix the damage your empire has done. Prove that Valyrians can be more than conquerors." The crowd erupted. Nobles shouted in outrage. Prisoners cheered. Guards looked confused, but the Empress just stared at Taeho. "You're offering me redemption," she said. "I'm offering you a chance to be remembered, as someone who chose to do the right thing when it mattered." "Most," General Vextahan laughed bitterly. "You cannot seriously be considering this. We are Valyrians. We do not bow to inferior species." "Look around you," the Empress said quietly. These inferior species have brought our empire to its knees in a single day. Maybe it's time to admit we were wrong about who was superior. She walked to the center of the arena, where the holographic cameras could capture her clearly. Her image was being broadcast to every world in the empire, watched by billions of people. "I am Empress Velandra, ruler of the Valerian Empire," she began. "For 1,000 years, my people have conquered and controlled other species, believing ourselves to be superior in every way." She looked directly at Tejo. "Today, a human soldier has proven me wrong, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through something we had forgotten how to value, the ability to inspire others to be brave." The arena was so quiet you could hear people breathing. "I hereby dissolve the Valerian Empire," she continued. "All conquered worlds are free to choose their own governments. All political prisoners are pardoned and released. All military forces are ordered to stand down immediately." General Vextahan roared in fury. "I will not allow this." He raised his weapon toward the Empress, but he never got to fire it. Dozens of guards, nobles, and even some of his own soldiers tackled him to the ground. The crystal dust had done its work. For the first time in centuries, Valerians were thinking clearly enough to see that their empire had become a nightmare. Furthermore, the Empress continued, "I accept the offer to join the new coalition. Valerian knowledge and technology will be shared freely to help repair the damage we have caused." She walked over to Tejo. "You have won, Captain Kim, not just the battle, but the war. The question now is, what kind of peace do you want to build?" Over the following months, Tejo found himself in a position he had never expected, helping to govern a galaxy. The new coalition included representatives from hundreds of species. Humans played an important role, but they were just one voice among many. The hardest part was figuring out how to turn former enemies into partners. Su-Jin led a team of scientists from different worlds, working to develop new technologies that didn't depend on the poisonous crystals. They made rapid progress when they combined human creativity with Valerian knowledge and engineering skills from other species. Min Seok became head of the new coalition fleet. Training former enemies to work together, it wasn't easy. But gradually, ships that had once fought each other began operating as unified squadrons. Na-Young worked on rebuilding the worlds damaged by centuries of Valerian rule. She designed new cities that could be adapted for different species, with humans, Valerians, and dozens of other races living side by side. The former Empress, now simply called Velandra, proved to be surprisingly effective at diplomacy. Her knowledge of Valerian psychology helped convince die-hard Imperial loyalists to accept the new reality. She also worked closely with Su-Jin to develop treatments that could heal the mental damage caused by crystal poisoning. "Do you ever regret it?" Velandra asked Tejo one evening as they worked late in the coalition headquarters. "You could have accepted my original offer and lived a comfortable life. Instead, you chose the hard path." Tejo looked out the window at the busy spaceport below. Ships from dozens of worlds came and went, carrying not weapons of war but supplies for rebuilding. Students going to learn from other cultures, and families reuniting after years of separation. "Sometimes the hard path is the only one worth taking," he said. "Your species is very strange," Velandra said, but she was smiling. "Most people would have taken revenge on their former oppressors. Instead, you offer partnership. Revenge just creates more enemies. Partnership creates more friends. And friends are more useful than subjects? Friends are more useful than anything." In the end, that was the lesson that saved the galaxy, that the strongest force in the universe isn't psychic power or advanced technology or superior firepower. It's the simple human belief that everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were yesterday. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.